Namaste. Welcome, beautiful souls. My goodness, I do talk a lot. I had no idea that I went over time with my last broadcast, but here I am. This is part 3 of Out of Print, Unapologetic. And this particular edition of Out of Print, Unapologetic is Oracle decks. And I'm going to share with you some of my older Oracle decks. I have been going through my library and paring it down. And so many of the decks that I am sharing with you are available for sale, and there is information in the description box below. Some of these I have some beautiful, beautiful memories of, and I want to talk a little bit about my experience with DOREEN Virtue workshops back in the day and what an impact these had on me. So welcome. If you're new, my name is Sadhana, and I've been reading the cards for a long time, and it just really is a pleasure to share and reflect all that I've been through. So welcome. I have 6 DOREEN Virtue decks here that I've pulled out to share with you today. And this first one is called Archangel Oracle Cards. And one of the things I do want to say before I get going is that all of these decks are available as knockoffs and counterfeit decks on various websites, including Amazon. And what I'm showing you here today are the original decks that are genuinely authentic. These were all published, I believe, by Hay House in California. This one is from 2004. And I even have in this one is even signed by DOREEN Virtue. So this one is Archangel Oracle Cards. I did in Vancouver, British Columbia, a couple of DOREEN Virtue workshops where I purchased many of these decks. And they were really part of my sanity, my daily practice. When I decided that my spiritual, personal and private practices were going to become something that I do every single day. And I can't tell you what a blessing that these cards were. I'm just going to switch here, go this way. That might be better. And as I go through these cards, I have some really, all of these cards were used and reflected on and journaled with. And they were really helpful for me as a young, I wasn't so young. I had my first child when I was 30, but I was really busy. I had lots of young children and I needed moments of space and silence. And these cards were all a part of that. So this is the Archangel Oracle. And I believe there are 3 cards for each of the archangels. And many of these archangels you may not have heard of. I don't know if there's a summary of the archangels, but there's, I believe, 3 cards for each one. And there is information about the artwork at the back of the book as well, too. So, yeah. The next one perhaps is my favorite of all of these decks, and that is the Ascended Masters book. And I will be opening and putting these away as I go. And I think that this one is my favorite because I there are so many of these ascended masters that I have worked with and received messages from. And over the years, it's funny how our tastes change. But when I come back to a deck like this, after so many years, I feel like kind of like it's coming home, and that I could actually pull this deck out now and sit with it as a daily connection and a daily reading. So why don't we look at Lady Nada, and I'll read you a little bit from here. This card is called Mother, Wife, Sister, Daughter. The issue that you're asking about involves a significant woman in your life, such as your mother, wife, girlfriend, sister, or daughter. The first person who comes to mind is correct. Any unhealed feelings that you carry toward this person could be blocking or slowing the manifestation of your dreams, as well as leading to imbalances. This is a perfect time to call upon God, your guides, and your angels to release any toxins associated with past or present female relationships. The process opens the way for healthy relationships with women, and including your own feminine energy. There are other meanings as well as information about Lady Nada herself. It says Lady Nada is an ascended master who works with Saint Germain and Archangel Michael to help bring about balance of the male-female energies in the world. Her name signifies the beautiful sound of the void of silence where peace is. You can call upon Lady Nada to help you find peace with both females and males in your life, and also to harmonize and balance masculine and feminine energy within yourself. So you can tell that this was written in a day where gender identification wasn't something that was talked of. And this particular one came from, it was after the other one. So this one is 2007. This deck, I also have the novel, and this novel and this deck, I actually lent it to someone and they never returned it. And I was able to find another copy, an authentic copy, some years back. And I think that the novel is the one I originally had, but this story and the background of this deck really touched me deeply. There is a story in the novel where DOREEN is walking along, it might just be a sidewalk in her neighborhood. And I think one day she hears something but doesn't really pay attention. And then subsequent day, she actually stops and she begins to receive messages from the fairies. And when I think about this book, I'm going to think about that book and this particular deck. I think about my own children, and I remember they had this beautiful babysitter who would take them on fairy walks. And this is a really special kind of connection with somebody who was able to deeply connect with the fairies. And this book is 2001. Sorry, this deck is 2001. I don't have the novel on my table. Most of the DOREEN Virtue decks have multiple artists in them. And then I also have magical unicorns, messages from your angels. And these are beautiful decks. I used this one with my own children, and one in particular, I may have actually bought it for her. Look at these bags. It was part of her healing and her awareness of her own work lurking, no audio, but enjoying watching. Okay. I'm hoping that I have audio. Okay. What I was about to say was that this deck was part of her own healing and working with her own clairvoyancy. And you know, this kind of thing is such a beautiful offering because you have an opportunity to begin to shuffle and draw cards. And, you know, even if your child couldn't understand every single word that was in this description, by reading something aloud like this with a child, you can really connect on a very, very special level. Yeah. I actually have one more of these decks, which that same child is using right now. And she's 27. So you want to see this one? May as well show you. That's so funny. This first card in this book, this is her spiritual name. This one's from 2002. I wonder, I have a couple of these books that were signed by DOREEN Virtue. And this one does have a few handwritten notes in the book as well. And this is messages from your angels. And then the last DOREEN Virtue book the last DOREEN Virtue deck I'm going to share with you is Past Lives. Now, this one I purchased more recently, and I had to go through the process of weeding through. It was probably about 6 or 7 years ago that I purchased this. But even at that time, there were counterfeit decks on the market. And maybe not that long ago. Let's see. Because in this picture, her hair was dark brown, and I forget what year she went from blonde to dark brown. And this is 2014, so 10 years ago. I don't know when it went out of print, but it had just gone out of print when I tried to find it. And when I tried to find it, there were lots of counterfeit decks on the market. And I did talk about this last week, and it was such an emotional video that I did, and I almost took it down because it literally drained me. It knocked the wind out of me to do something like that on my channel. But it's still up there if you're interested. And I want to ask all of you to be very mindful of your shopping habits. And not just for tarot decks, because I know there are knockoffs and counterfeits for every kind of merchandise out there. Yeah. So this particular deck I purchased to go with Marielle. At that time, I was using the Labyrinth Tarot and a few different decks that I was working with for past life readings. And at that time, I was doing a lot of past life readings. And I really like the simplicity of this deck, or the pointing, the way that this deck helped to point or focus to a theme that was significant in the reading. And I think in a video where I talk about past life readings, one of the things I did with this deck was I sorted it into place cards, because there's a few different themes in this deck. It might actually be sorted right now. So there's archetypes like mother, orphan, monk, and nun. And so there's a few different major topics here where you can sort this deck into certain cards, and you could actually use this deck and draw one from each pile. It's kind of a clever offering. And so I want to repeat that while all of these decks are out of print, there are counterfeit copies available on the market, or fake copies, or whatever you want to call them. All right. Now let's go to Rebecca LeBVRE. Rebecca LeBVRE still has a very active website, and just a beautiful person. I did interview her on my channel. And these 3 decks are really something special. I don't have anything like this in my library, tarot or oracle. Mostly the paper, but there's more to it than that. These 3 boxes open. They are top opening, and so the cards sit in the box like this. And they are printed on uncoated watercolor paper. And it is the most beautiful paper. And then on the back of each card, there is a oracular message about each of the plants, and the whole deck is divided into suits as well too. So this is one of those decks where you could divide into suits and work with that information. And I'm going to shuffle. I don't know if my mic is, maybe I turn my mic, you can hear, but this is one of the most beautiful tactile experiences in shuffling, with this gorgeous uncoated paper. And so in this series, there is Flora Healing, Fauna Inspiration. These are the fauna cards. And like the Flora, on the back of each card, there is an oracular message, a keyword, and an element. Swan teaches about awakening the power of self-love and recognizing inner beauty. Drawing energy from our virtue, she encourages us to reflect upon our fortuitous bounty. In the embrace of her grace, we are reminded to swim gently with the currents of life rather than against them. She rouses us to affectionately take review of our emotions, examine the trappings of our humanness, and acknowledge our shortcomings. Once we are able to love ourselves, we are able to love others without expectation. Just a really beautiful collection of fauna. And I believe I have 2 or 3 videos on all of these cards on my channel. If you look up Flora Healing or Rebecca LeFeb or something like that, you'll see find more videos. And the third deck in her series is called Fantastic Being. And this is a really fun deck. I think she really went above and beyond in this one. And interesting, each of these boxes has a subtitle. Fauna Inspiration is illumination cards. Flora Healing is restorative cards. And this one's called manifestation cards. And these fantastic beings, you only see a portion of the being. Moai, voyage. Like the pyramids of Egypt, the stone circles across Great Britain, the Rose City in Jordan, the citadel at Machu Picchu. It is anyone's guess how the moai of Rapa Nui were quarried, moved, and placed. Look at this card. Isn't that beautiful? I think that's Green Man. Griffin. Yeah, this is a very amazing deck. Very. And also kind of fun, you know, to guess what the card represents. Sphinx. Tree of Life. Yeah. Really something. Okay. Now, the rest of the cards that I'm going to show you are not... Oh, just wait. I do have a few more Rebecca LeFeb decks. Rebecca created... So this Flora Healing deck, she created a junior deck and called it Flora Friends. And this one I have is actually sealed. Does not come or did not come in a box. I do have another copy I'll show you. And so this particular deck comes with 35 cards, and this one comes with 57 cards. The paper is different. It's rose petal finish, so it's a lot more durable. And there is not an oracular message. There is just a keyword on each of the cards. And I purchased these decks for teachers, creative teachers who inspire children to write and paint and draw, to write poetry. And I purchased multiple copies, and I have a few extra copies left. So I have 2 of this one and 1 of the junior animal deck. And the junior animal deck looks like this. So again, there's nothing on the back, just Fauna Friends. And there is a keyword and the name of the animal. And all of Rebecca's artwork is drawn by Phoebe. Actually, you know, there's a couple of things I should tell you. You should watch the interview with her if you're interested in this art. What I learned was that Phoebe did the artwork, and either Rebecca colored it or she touched it up with the watercolor. It really was a joint effort. So this is the junior deck, Fauna Friends. And I do have the mini Fantastic Being and the mini Fauna Inspiration, but they aren't complete because I've given some cards away, and I would also be willing to release those for a very reasonable price. Okay, so next, I did make a list because I wrote all the decks below and I wanted to keep it in the same order for presentation. Okay, so next is Earthly Souls and Spirits. This deck is now available mass market. And in the beginning, it was available as a very large oracle deck. This is by Terry Foss and her daughter, I believe. These enormous cards. I have to zoom out for you. And I'm going to be keeping the very large ones. And this is the Make Playing Cards version. I thought I would use it, but I don't. And so it comes in a 2-part box. And I'm sure you're all familiar with Make Playing Cards stock. And so let's look at a few of these cards from Earthly Souls and Spirits. I believe she also has a PDF if you need more information about these cards, but they're so beautiful. I've used them on their own. I've used them with Everyday Witch. I've used them with many other watercolor decks. I mean, this deck is such a priceless. I mean, if you ever see the original extra large deck for sale on Facebook Marketplace or something, you would never regret picking it up. And the color on the Make Playing Cards version is just as beautiful, if not even slightly more saturated than the original. So beautiful. And I honestly, I don't know what the cardstock is, or how the current mass market version would compare. If the font stayed the same, or I don't know. Yeah. So this is Earthly Souls and Spirits by Terry Foss. And I believe her daughter had a hand in this somewhere as well, too. Okay. Now, the creator of this deck, I think her name often gets misconstrued. Her website name is Deja Druid, but her name is Deja Osborne. And this is the Personal Power Oracle. Comes in a clamshell box. With a little guide book. And look at these edges. I mean, this is a really beautiful deck. Deja has a lot of decks. And this one is really kind of special. And you might ask, why am I releasing some of these decks? Well, I have been reading for a long time, and I don't know, there just comes a time when one's library of decks is busting at the seams. Yeah, this is... I believe I've done a full walkthrough of this deck as well, too. And if I haven't, and you would like to see one, let me know. So you can go to my YouTube page, put in Personal Power, Deja Osborne, and check it out. Now, the next deck is also available presently mass market. And I've had this for quite some time. This is one of Chris... Just a second, it's on the bottom here. One of Chris Ann's decks. Comes in this ginormous box. And I can't tell you much, I can't tell you anything about the mass market version of it, but this was how the deck originally came. This is the Sacred Creators Oracle. In a large 2-part box. And those are the cards. And this guidebook is really something. You could work just with this guidebook. And I don't know, I'm assuming that the mass market version includes all of this. It would be a hugely chunky little white book. So I don't know, but this is a massive guidebook that has, so here's card 37. Yeah, there's 3 to 5 pages on every card. So, yeah. Maybe you can find a comparison of the mass market and the indie deck elsewhere. So if you have other Chris Ann decks, you'll recognize the card backs, and it has matte gold edges. And this is really thick cardstock. I can riffle shuffle the deck. I'd say this is more than 3 60 GSM. Very, very thick cardstock. So what should we do for a shadow? Maybe go this way. There's a lot of cards in this deck. And I did this for manifestation. I use this deck for building my business. Honestly, this is a deck that I could have out all the time. Fall in love with your own story. What a beautiful card. What do you really want? Or what do you really want? Magic happens when you most expect it. Yeah. And this, it was called Sacred Creators Oracle, but we are all creators in different ways in different times of our life. This is not just a tarot deck for people who have a sacred work business. You know, this is a very, this deck is one of full, this deck is full of beautiful potential for anybody. All right. Now, this is funny. This deck is available in a different version. This is the Tanis Lenormand by Celia Melville. And it comes in a, like a matchbox. And I have a lot of Lenormand decks. This deck looks a little bit like the Dreaming Way Lenormand. It is very sweet. And if you have other decks by Celia Melville, you know, you might recognize this a little bit in the Fox deck, some of this artwork. Love this card. I have a rather extensive Lenormand playlist on my channel as well too. If you don't read Lenormand and you have been thinking about learning how to read it, it's a great fish card. You know, a lot of Lenormand decks don't have a whole lot of fish on the card, and it is and I don't know if second, third versions of this editions of this deck were changed. I'm sure this little fox inspired the Renard deck. Yeah, it's a sweet little Lenormand. Hello, Karina. Welcome. It does have playing card associations on it. And if you are one of those collectors that places value in errors, one of the queens is wrong on this deck. So, I don't know, like I know some people place value in decks that have errors. All right, next is another really special one that I hunted high and low for because I have the colored version of this deck. And I really wanted the black and white version. I was working personally with the Gene Keys and working with my own Gene Keys and on this program. And I think I came to it through Rosie Aronson, who is the creator of this deck. Now, the black and white version of this deck is smaller. I may have a side-by-side of the colored and black white version on my channel. If I don't, and if you're interested, let me know and I will do that. These are really powerful cards. And every single card has 3 qualities that it evokes. There are characteristics of its shadow that are explained, as well as its gift and a higher frequency of this energy. And the numbers on the top of the card correspond to the gene key number. And if you don't know this program, this is a program by Richard Rudd that also very much connects to the 64 hexagrams of the I Ching. And I have worked with this deck with my, is it called the Tao Oracle? I don't think it's called the I Ching Oracle, the Tao Oracle, and worked with the same hexagram from the Tao Oracle as from this deck. And you will recognize some of the faces in these cards. And some of them you will stare at and you will go, who is that? Who is that? And I know who this is to me, but it might be somebody quite different to you. And the faces are not named in the book. So let's go to the 15th card, for the 15th gene key, and I will read you their story, or part of their story anyway. The gift of this card is magnetism. The shadow is dullness. The siddhi is fluorescence. We've been living in that same small town forever. Maybe it was the muggy days or my hopping hormones, as my mum liked to say, but one summer everything about that place rubbed me the wrong way. It wasn't that there was something horrible going on, it was that nothing was going on. I thought I would die from the dullness. Either that or strangle my sister for constantly trying to distract herself from the undeniable emptiness of our lives. My mom complained about my attitude. Maybe my sister couldn't stick with anyone or anything for more than 5 blinks at a time, and maybe her behavior was extreme, but at least she was trying. Me, I didn't care. I couldn't see the point of caring much about anything or anyone. My life was going nowhere. Hello, Marie Madeline. But then I found myself looking at my dog, Nilly. There she was, lounging on the porch with her tongue hanging out, happy as a canine clam. At first, I was green with envy. How on earth did she do that? Just sit there, all relaxed, not needing to change a thing, and looking so annoyingly cute on top of it. Next thing I knew, I was lying down next to her, listening to the soft rise and fall of her furry belly, staring up at the sky, doing nothing for hours. And in that timeless time, I bathed in so much emptiness that I started to overflow with a feeling that was better than happiness. Tears welled up, and I squeezed Nilly until she could barely catch a pant. Since then, Mum says I'm giving off a glow. Even my sister is slowing down enough to hang out with me, even when there's nothing to do at all. And then there's questions for contemplation, a lot of them. And they're deep, and it's just really, really beautiful. Oh, you're very welcome. Thank you for the nice feedback, Marie Madeline. All right. And then I have one more deck. Now, this deck, of course, this is still available. This is a Colette Baron Reid deck. But in the first version of this deck, it was not borderless. And so I trimmed it. And edged it in gold. And oh my goodness, there was a time when I really, really used this deck. And I don't know if any of the cards were changed. Sometimes when Hay House puts out a new iteration of the deck and they change it from the old version with borders to a borderless version, they add a few cards. But this is not the borderless version. This is the first version of the deck that I trimmed by hand and edged. And I think of Colette Baron Reid's work. I mean, I do like the map one, the Enchanted Map Oracle. This is a pretty special deck, though. I use this with a couple of people quite regularly. And of course, it's kind of intuitive. I mean, you don't need to read the guidebook. Shall we read this one, 37? Oh, not page 37, card 37. Okay. Chunky little guidebook. And these guidebooks do not fall apart like some of the other ones I mentioned, or maybe that was in the last video. Self-criticism, the wounded ego, unnecessary dramas. So yeah, this deck does include some pretty hard knocking cards. And which message should we read? There's an oracle message. Maybe I'll read that one. A relationship message, a prosperity message, and a protection message. There is a story woven through the imperfect fabric of life that tells of hurt and loss, rejection and humiliation, self-loathing and arrogance, and all manner of suffering born of unnecessary dramas. It is the old story, whose refrain is that you cannot do this, must not go there, should not say that, lest your world come crumbling down. Today, know that none of this is actually true. The sky is not falling. The voice you hear is just a small, scared, conditioned part of you that got stuck in a lie, wants to protect you, and needs to be seen as a victim. Love that lost piece of you. Fear is all it knows. Distorted guidance is preventing you from being true to yourself. You are not your story, and the narrator is simply the voice of your fearful part, small and vulnerable and easily soothed. This is a beautiful book. You know, some books really do stand the test of time and have great, great binding. Yeah. So that's all I have for you today here. A selection of my out-of-print oracle decks. So thank you. Thanks for watching. And this is, like I said, the third in a series of out of print decks, and many I am releasing. Some I've already sold, and if you're interested, please contact me through my website, info@integrativehealingwithsadhana.com. Thank you so much. Have a lovely rest of your day. Namaste.